My friends, the time has come. We were thinking about delaying it, maybe doing it a little later. In the episode, you might hear me say, February 9th, we're going to make it for sale, but it is here. Meaningful People, the game. I don't know if it's reversed or you see it the way I see it, but here is the box. It'll be shipped into you. The game. Pre-orders right now. meaningfulminute.org/the game. I'm going to give you a little bit of a look. And of course, we're going to do a question that you can answer in the comments to win $200. And maybe we'll ship the winner a game. Look at this beauty. Look at this beauty. Take over the cover. Perfect for all your Shabbos tables, for your get-togethers with your friend, with your family. 125 questions. You have your own little podcast going on. What a way to get to know your friends and your family better. Have good, kosher, meaningful conversation. You know, I'm going to pick a question that we're going to do for the question of the week to answer in the comments. And it might be a little bit of a hard one because it's the luck of the draw. So the question I'm going to pick out right now, let's do it. This question, the answer in the comments right now, we're going to pick one winner to get $200 cash, and we're going to ship you a game. Share one unique and positive thing about the place that you live. One unique positive thing about the place that you live. Guys, comment below where you live. One unique positive thing. If you can't think of one positive thing about where you live, it might be time to move. Anyways, go ahead right now, meaningfulminute.org/the game. Order this. It is not so much money. It is great for your friends, your family, gifts. Go and get it while we still have them in stock. So guys, I was going to make this available February 9th because that's when we're going to really launch it. But pre-order right now. Pre-order right now. Get this game for your family. You guys are going to love this. Get your own little mini podcast going. Pre-order right now. meaningfulminute.org/the game. This episode with Rabbi Shais Taub is an awesome episode. We discussed so many topics. Did you guys know that he's the most followed rabbi on social media? Yeah, he completely exploded by discussing the hard topics, the important topics. Well, listen big in this episode. Of course, this episode is sponsored by my friends at PZ Deals. Never, ever pay full price again. You know, you're searching online or maybe you're in a store, ancient, and you're seeing these prices and you're like, yeah, well, the price is what it is. That's what I got to pay. No, you don't. Before I order anything from Amazon, before I go to Costco, before I go to Walmart, whatever it is, I always head to PZ. And let me tell you, the prices there are just better. So right now, head to your app store, your Google Play Store, and download the PZ Deals app. You can make the settings in a way that they will alert you for certain sales in certain categories. And anytime there's maybe a price that drops suddenly, you could be the first one to know. So download the PZ Deals app right now and never pay full price again. And of course, like every episode of Meaningful People, I go ahead, I take out my phone, go to the Pushka app, and give a little tzedaka, give some for the poor and needy, and that's what Colel Chabad does. So go ahead to pushka.cc/meaningful, download that Pushka app, and go ahead and give some tzedaka and enjoy this episode.
Okay.
Right.
So you've had, I mean, a lot has changed since the last time we spoke. Since the last time we had you on the podcast.
How long ago was it?
At least 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe.
Okay.
Your following has just erupted on social media completely.
Social media had a breakthrough.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Like you went from pretty much 0 to 437,000 followers.
Yeah.
The quickest I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, it's more than going from 0 to 4. It's 437,000 on Instagram. 437,000. Yeah. It's not that it went from 0 to 437. It took me 3-4 years to get from 0 to 40,000.
Yeah.
And then the 40,000 to the 437,000 was like in half a year.
Yeah.
So it's like you would think the rate is, about 10,000 followers a year, and then all of a sudden becomes like 10,000 followers a week.
Yeah. When you hit it with the algorithm and when you're doing stuff that people like, it just explodes. Like you have videos that have 10 million views, 13 million views.
Right. That's where the growth comes from.
That's insane.
Those videos, multiple videos with not just, millions, but like 10 million. And yeah.
Do you like tell me?
I have a formula for it. Yes. And I learned a lot about life from it.
Oh, yeah.
And I will share it for free.
Ooh.
And 100%. You don't have to buy my creator's course or anything like that. I'll share it with you because I think it's valuable insight for anyone, even if, first of all, everyone's on social media. Everyone, even like people who are not creators, but everyone posts something.
Especially like kids, hopefully.
Oh yeah, hopefully, yeah. Yes, of course, yeah.
They're on 24/6.
Right. So, but even if you're not a creator, which is an interesting term that we use, I learned a lot about myself and about life. You know, the Baal Shem Tov taught that from everything you see and hear, you have to take out a lesson in how to serve Hashem. So I've been immersed in this world of social media for a few years. So if I'm immersed in something for a few years, I didn't just see it and hear it once. I'm seeing it and hearing it on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I have to take out some type of teaching in how to serve Hashem. So I'll tell you a big one that I learned, and this is my free tip to everybody. The algorithm, at least in its current state, abhors confusion. It doesn't like mixed signals. It doesn't like not knowing who you are. What's interesting is that a lot of the things that we as human beings naturally do, whether we're creating content or we're in a real life social setting, a lot of things we as human beings naturally do to be liked is we try to fit in.
Right. Adapt to what you think people want to hear.
The expectations, what do people want? And what happens, two things happen. First of all, you disappear because you've successfully adapted to what everything's going around, so you're not special anymore.
Right.
And the second thing that happens is, because it's inauthentic, it's by definition inconsistent. Because it's not real. It's like you're saying what you think you should say, but that's always sort of fleeting based on, reading the room. And so what happens is you're presenting, we do this in day-to-day life. We present different versions of ourselves for different settings based on what we think will be accepted, because we want to be accepted.
Yeah.
Right. And the algorithm gets really confused from that because I can't put a finger on it. Who is this guy? What is he about?
What's the nimshal? Because that's like a beautiful metaphor.
So
what is the algorithm in our lives?
Well, the algorithm in our lives means clearing the path to success where you're working with yourself instead of against yourself, where you start to get the geometric growth, where things start to explode, they open up, and where the people who already are interested in you but don't know you yet are going to start coming into your life. But let me spell out very clearly, because I said it in the negative. I didn't say it in the positive. I want to say it in the positive. I said the negative. The negative is we confuse the algorithm by trying to fit in. So that's what not to do. Okay, so what did I learn? Huge life lesson. Figure out who you are and double down on it. Don't try to be something you're not. Be exactly what you are. Be authentic. Lean into your quirks. Lean into whatever it is that, even if you don't think anyone else will like it. And it's counterintuitive. It's the opposite of what we learned how to do since we were kids.
Yeah.
How to fit in. But what happens is when you start presenting the most authentic version of yourself, you're starting to stand out. And also you achieve this remarkable consistency. Truth is so consistent. A lie is a harsh term, but fitting in is a type of a lie. It's by definition inconsistent. I'm being this person for this group and this person for that group. But when you start to just be yourself, then the consistency allows the algorithm to identify you and say, you're this guy. Now, not everyone is looking for you. Not everyone's going to like you. That's fine. At least the people who will like you are going to be able to find you. So this is what I learned, is be an authentic version of yourself. Be a proud version of yourself. Don't minimize your light. Don't reduce yourself. Don't twist or shape yourself. Just be you in the best version you can be at this moment. And everything starts coming to you.
Unapologetically also.
Unapologetic.
Who have been, I guess, some of those people that have found you and who consume your content that you like? Who are they? If you can like put a finger on them.
Interesting question.
What type of people are they?
It's such an interesting question. I mean, obviously, when you get to numbers, like I'm dealing with on social media now, even though I'm creating overtly Jewish content and I'm a rabbi and that's pretty explicit in everything that I do, but there's a lot of this big non-Jewish following, which is interesting. A lot of people will comment like, I don't know why I'm watching a rabbi right now.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. And in a certain way, by the way, I feel like it's a unique opportunity to make a Kiddush Hashem and to combat anti-Semitism in a very powerful way, where I'm not getting engaged in the dirtiness of polemic and debate, which I don't think is usually productive anyway, but rather it's like I'm putting something out there and somebody who might not have other interactions with a Jewish person is connecting to it and saying, oh, like that makes sense, that, I can use that in my life.
Right.
So it's a huge thing. But who are these people? It's funny. It's like all types of people. But if I had to like profile it, it's interesting. I think it's a lot of people who also struggle with what I was just talking about fitting in.
People who have masked who they are over life.
Yeah, that's exactly the word. You said mask.
Yeah. Yes,
and especially a lot of neurodivergent people or parents of neurodivergent kids. There's a term, and I just for full disclaimer, I'm not a mental health professional. I know a lot of people think I am because of some of the content that I speak about. I'm not. So sometimes if I'll use terms that sound clinical, please understand I'm using it colloquially.
Right.
Please don't hold me to it. These are not diagnostic terms or anything, but there's a term that people who are neurodivergent, people who, what autism spectrum, ADHD, sometimes they even say complex post-traumatic stress disorder is a type of neurodivergence. But, people whose minds are wired a little bit differently. So there's a behavior that they'll engage in called masking. And you could obviously, it's what is masking? It just means behaving in a way that's socially acceptable. Which I'm not against that. I'm not saying we should go around and try to offend people and be as, raucous and in your face as possible,
right,
like just for the heck of it. But what I'm saying is there are a lot of people whose, I would almost call it like primary occupation to the point where they're expending inordinate effort and concentration and focus on this one task is masking. And they, what it is in the comments that I get a lot from people like, I feel so heard. I feel so seen. I'm not alone. I can't believe somebody put this into words. Because a lot of times when someone who's I'll just, use a crass term like the oddball person goes through life and they learn how to mask. So what's there's pros and cons. One of the pros is, so you basically slide by and you don't get outed and you don't get bullied. But one of the cons is you do such a good job masking that you're terribly alone. Nobody
right,
knows who you really are and how hard you're working.
And you barely know who you are.
And then you do it long enough and you don't even know the difference between, you just know you're tired. You just know you're exhausted.
Yeah. Is this something that you yourself dealt with that you're so, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, cause you talk about it so eloquently and the people,
people are like, where'd you learn about this?
No, it really resonates. It really resonates with people. So I'm curious where that stems from in your life and what that looked like.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been sort of weird.
Full stop, end sentence. It's sort of been weird.
Yeah, sort of been weird. Yeah. And struggling to figure out what are the unwritten rules for social engagement, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, like what the rules, like
In what scenarios?
I don't know, little stuff, like small talk, like I don't like it, but apparently you're supposed to do it. How's the weather?
So you like walk up to people like, so how's your marriage? Like,
well, it's funny you say it. Like, to me, that would be much more like, I don't have to answer.
I don't like small talk either. I think small talk is
that's why you do this.
Right.
Now you have a perfect alibi for going in deep and talking to people about things that really matter, meaningful stuff. Yeah.
But like, I feel like that's something that's who does like small talk.
I feel like, well, the term, neurodivergent implies that they're diverging from something normative, which we'd call neurotypical. So supposedly, I would love to find out this isn't true, but supposedly neurotypical people, meaning what defines what's typical, the majority of people, they do enjoy small talk. That's
how many people do you think are neurodivergent in the world?
I don't know. I'm sure there's different estimates, but
we're gonna find out. That's very interesting. I wonder how many people are like, because neurodivergence could be, it's a very wide spectrum.
Yeah, then it means a lot of things. It's
my guess is probably gonna be like 1 in 5.
It could be, and the truth is, maybe like you're sort of implying, and I think this is sort of happening, that there's sort of like, in a way, a revolution of people saying, hold on a second, this particular social convention that we're all like agreeing to uphold, does anyone like this?
Right. What? 15 to 20%
20% neurodivergent
of the world.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like billions of people.
Yeah.
15 to 20%.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of engagement on your social media.
Yeah.
Besides, so I mean, like in your personal life, what are other scenarios, I guess, that you're able to relate to this topic so much?
I had a reel that did very well where I spoke about social anxiety. And again, like I said, I'm not a mental health professional. I know there's a formal definition of social anxiety. I don't know what it is. I'm not even that interested in what it is. I was responding to what that word meant for me, the experience of it for me. And I said, some people have social anxiety, not because they're like nervous or embarrassed or shy, but because being in a crowd of people is draining, because they're literally just feeling everything. I give a metaphor of, you're in a room with 100 different radios playing 100 different stations. And it's just this chaos, this noise. And millions of people resonated with that experience and said, wow, he knows about the radios. He knows about the like being in large groups with lots of people, weddings, you have noise, you have the music, but also just the fact that you have lots of bodies in a room. Each one of those people carries their own vibration, their own energy. And I feel that stuff. I mean, and then also, like, you're in a wedding also, there's thousands of opportunities for social engagement. I mean, which is not a good thing, because like people are going to come up to you. When did your flight come in? I don't know, 5:03. Oh, really? No, it was actually at 4:54. Does it make a difference? Like, so yeah, you wanted a personal example? There's a personal example.
As a rabbi, though,
I know you have to go.
Like, no, even beyond the weddings, like this is something that you have to come face to face with very often. You travel the world speaking to different crowds, so
I know it's tough.
How do you do that?
There's a room full of people. It's draining. Yeah. First, I'll tell you two things. First of all, as I've recognized it in myself, I've been able to self-advocate better, which is now I know. See, I used to come home from, like, we talk about a speaking engagement. So I used to come home from a speaking engagement and not know why I felt
like
sick. For like 3-4 days. And now that's why. And now that I know it, it's like it's a little bit more manageable. But another thing is, now that I know it, I can push myself a little bit more. And that's been a big area of personal growth for me recently, is forcing myself to show up in physical places. It would be so easy for me with the life that Hashem, I'm so grateful what I've been given. I could hide behind a computer for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I forced myself to have those in-person experiences, because you know how I look at it, and this is how I speak about it, because this is how I look at it. to me, it all comes down to the embodiment experience. That who's the real you? The real you is a soul. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. So we're having this embodiment experience, soul and a body, being human for however long. And there's a purpose, and not just a purpose, the purpose. Like, especially you'll learn Chassidus, especially Chabad Chassidus talks about Dira B'Tachteinu, which is actually a concept from the Medrash, but that Hashem, the infinite one, the transcendent one, what did he want? He wanted a dwelling in the finite world, in the physical world, which is the archetypical example of that is the Beis HaMikdash, the physical building. Why the Kodesh HaKadoshim? Why is the Holy of Holies a physical place, right? And then Mashiach it's not something that happens up in heaven. Mashiach is physical. It's here, this world. To the extent that the physical world becomes so refined, Tchias HaMesim, that the souls in heaven are going to want to be here because the physical world will be more elevated than Gan Eden, than the highest levels of heaven. So it's all about the physical. So the soul comes down to the body for a certain amount of time to be able to engage in the physical world. It's like this, if I have to simplify it, it's like showing up for physical experiences. That's what mitzvahs, by the way, are all, by and large, physical acts. You know how the Alter Rebbe talks about the Meraglim, which is my bar mitzvah parsha Shlach. He says that the Meraglim were afraid to enter Eretz Yisrael because they didn't want to be involved in physicality. They wanted to learn. Matan Torah already was. They had Torah. They could learn Torah, but they wanted to learn it on a conceptual level. They didn't want to actually get their hands dirty, literally get their hands, start farming, Meiser and Truma, and what do you need it for? And that was the tragedy, the Bechira L'Doros, the tragedy, Tisha B'Av was, the first tragedy was their rejection of physicality. They wanted to have a purely disembodied, spiritual, abstract connection, and Hashem put us here to have an embodied connection.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think, like, if you look in the world today, again, I'm not a mental health professional, so my knowledge of these topics is like this deep, but it's interesting to observe how in the area of mental health and healing, the emphasis now on somatic healing, on the body. It's like talk therapy, the abstraction, the words can only get us so far.
Right.
But like, where's the depth that we really need to heal in is the physical embodiment.
Right. That's really interesting. It's like, you really, with this past year, what's been happening, you have built this whole new community of people who are just eating out of your hand. They're dying for more of this type of content, for more of this type of information. Does that feel natural for you to lean into that?
Yeah, because I'm talking about something that I genuinely care about. It's not, again, like I started off saying, it's not like I figured out, what will people like to hear? I said, I'm just going to talk about what I want to hear. So it feels very natural. Yeah. And very validating, because as much as people are telling me that my content makes them feel seen and heard and less alone, well, what do you think it has the effect on me?
Right.
I'm also feeling less alone. So
with as large as the following as you have, anti-Semitism is probably something that it rears its ugly head.
But you know what? I'm very blessed that, let's say, Lefi Erech, relatively speaking, my content is drawing almost all very positive energy, which may have to do something with the type of content that it is.
Right. You're not really speaking about Israel. You're not speaking about hostages. You're not speaking about those things.
Yeah, and it's not just that I'm avoiding the contentious issues or political issue or politicized issues, I should say. It's that the whole spirit of what I'm sharing is in a spirit of compassion, and I think the compassion draws compassion, and so people are showing up largely from a place of compassion.
Do you have what to say on these things? Meaning, do you have thoughts that you're holding back, maybe about what's going on in the world that you want to talk about? This is a safe place to talk about it. Yeah,
this. I do.
Current events. What's on Rabbi
Current
Shais Taub's
events.
mind
Yeah.
on the current events?
I have a current event hot take that I just shared, not publicly, but a couple days ago. I was telling my family. So, and this is like today everything is politicized. So it's like everything's a minefield. So even this, it's gonna trigger somebody. But and I genuinely try to avoid triggering people, not just because I'm trying to. I don't know. It's not a cynical thing where it's like I want to keep myself clean from these things. It's more like it's out of sensitivity. It's like I see that I have created a safe space for people, and there are certain things that just nowadays, and the algorithm is part of why it's so polarized and why it's so triggering. It's like I want people to be able to connect, and I want them to feel like a healing experience. I don't want people being triggered. But
So what's that hot take?
okay, the hot take. Okay, so
I love hot. I'm a sucker for hot take.
you're going to tell me about it after I get it out. You'll be like, "That's not such a hot take." But for
Okay.
me, okay, let's float it out there. So there was an executive order from the Trump administration to declassify the FBI files about JFK, RFK, and MLK.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously conspiracy theories abound. I mean, those are all not only iconic cultural figures, but there's certainly more to those stories than what we've been told. There's definitely more to it.
You think so?
I think so, for sure. For sure. We don't have we don't have the whole story on any of this.
I mean, like JFK was assassinated.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever. I'm not going to tell you, but whatever we're going to find out, it's more than what we officially know.
I heard there's like 5 million pages in the JFK.
Probably. There's probably so much information that when they release it at first, it's going to be unintelligible to anyone.
Right.
But
So what do you think?
okay, I don't know. I don't know. But here's what I want to tell you. My hot take is this. Let's suppose we find out that in any one of those 3 cases, or in all of them, the truth is shocking, and that the reason it was suppressed is precisely because it was felt that people couldn't handle it. My hot take is, I don't know if this is so hot, but that we'll find out this truth, we'll be shocked, and we will all continue living our lives. Not out of apathy, not out of who cares, but what I mean is in a healthy way of like, okay, so that was the thing that was supposedly the knowledge of which was going to destroy us, and now we all know it, and we're still here. And I think that's going to be a very important experience collectively.
Well, it happens with everything, no? I mean, like people felt even when Donald Trump was running for re-election, and on November 3rd, everyone is going to still be here November 5th. Like nothing.
Right, but that's where something happens. I'm talking about it's not even something's going to happen because whatever happened, it happened decades ago. I'm talking about sometimes we live in dread of knowledge that if I will know this, it will kill me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The fear of the knowledge that the truth will be too painful. And I mean, we do this all in microcosm in our personal lives. We carry certain experiences or the memories of certain experiences that are just too painful. And then we spend a lifetime covering it up and not facing it.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, you want to heal? You're going to have to just face the truth, and the truth's not going to kill you. I think that's so powerful.
I hear.
And it's going to be powerful. And it's going to be like, whatever it is, it may horrify us. It may cause pain, but we're going to be okay. And I think that's a really important experience for each of us to have as individuals. And if we can have it collectively as a society, I actually think it'll bring us together. Like we're still here. We're still standing.
Yeah.
We'll be right back to this episode in just a second. A quick word from my friends at ILS, Infinity Land Services, because when your title is protected by Infinity Land Services, No more stories, no more novels, no more excuses. Title after title after title. Your real estate transaction deserves to be protected. You need to be in good hands. So all you need to do is tell your agent, tell your broker, I think we got to use Infinity for title. That's all you got to say. It's like a criminal saying, I want a lawyer, and they'll be like, I got you. And then you're in good hands. Infinity Land Services at ilstitle.com. The best of the best. Mark Hershkowitz and his team have been in this game for a while now, and they are doing an incredible job. So when it comes to title, whether you're buying a $10 million building or your first home, make sure you choose ilstitle.com. My friends, you're going to head to corinpub.com, and right when you go on the website, you're going to see a new book by Erica Brown, Morning Has Broken, Faith After October 7th. That is a beautiful new book that Koren Pub has on their website, but that's not all they have. You see this Tanakh I have right over here? The Koren Tanakh of the land of Israel. This is on the Sefer Shemos, which we are in right now, and it is incredible. I am making my way through it, and I'm loving every single second. And this is one of the things of many that you can get on corinpub.com. That is Koren, modern day translation of the hard to read and understand texts. That's really what Koren stands for. Head to their website, corinpub.com. Use promo code MEANINGFUL for 15% off anything that you buy there. So head corinpub.com. Use promo code MEANINGFUL right now. Great books, great Sfarim, all for you. That is corinpub.com.
I mean, we've seen this nation divided in so many different ways. Over elections, over policies. As a Jewish people, being that you're, a thought leader in the frum world, what do you think are some ways that we can, modern Orthodox, Litvish, Hasidish, Chabad, Samer, could sort of bridge that gap and come together as a Jewish people?
Achdus Yisrael. Yeah, that's the most powerful tool that we have, is to unite with each other, to unite communities, but even within communities.
Yeah.
I mean, you're naming communities, but even within communities, there's division. Within families, there's division. Right. And I think the secret to unity on any of those levels is compassion, is to understand that all of us are broken in some way. I mean, we're in Gullus. We're experiencing, if you learn what Kabbalah and Chassidus have to say about it, it's Shechina Begulusa, the divine presence is in exile, which really means that in certain ways, it's like, well, you're talking about masking before. It's like Hashem Kaviyachol is masking in Gullus, and that Geula is like, finally Hashem reveals himself. What does it mean he reveals himself? It's like he gets to just be himself. So we're living in this Gullus framework right now, where we're all sort of these adapted versions of ourselves. We're afraid to be our authentic selves, or we don't know how to be our authentic selves, and a lot of these defense mechanisms and adaptations that we pick up to make ourselves feel safe, they end up being not so pleasant for others. The thing I'm doing to keep myself safe may be actually hurting someone else, and this is not to excuse hurtful behavior, but I'm saying one thing we can do is to realize how the dysfunction that you see in others is a symptom. It's not who the person is. The person is the soul. And the soul is pure. And to try to see each other as pure souls and try to sort of see the dysfunction as the aberration. That's not the person. Right. That's an adaptation that they picked up. And I'm not saying that we have to be foolish and we have to submit ourselves to mistreatment. I'm not saying that. I mean, there's a nuance here that is very important to bring out. It's important. It is important to protect yourself and to have adequate boundaries and to not make yourself available for mistreatment. It's incredibly important. What I'm saying is, even if you have boundaries and you have to take a step back so that you keep yourself safe, your feeling about this other person can be compassionate. So, I think that's an underlying theme of the healing that's going on. I see it going on. I mean, it's like just a little bit more understanding. Like someone that you meet, you don't know their backstory, but they have a story. And that story, by the way, isn't even going back to, what we call childhood trauma. If you really think about it, it's many Gilgulim, many lifetimes. I mean, like who knows? This is really a journey of a soul, which is something none of us can wrap our heads around. And by the moment that someone's presenting themselves to you in your life, and you're reacting to how they are here and now, it's like there's a whole story behind that. I mean, that's what it's in Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya. Lamed Beis means lave, which is the heart. Chapter 32 of Tanya. It says the secret to V'ahavta l'reacha kamecha is just to see someone as a soul. You see them as a soul, and you're going to have compassion on them.
What about the issue of someone not being able to forgive somebody, meaning someone who has wronged them? There could be somebody watching this, listening to this, that has someone in their life that has done some serious damage to them, and they feel like they'll never be able to forgive them.
Yeah.
How do you maneuver that?
Such a sensitive issue, and I have to be so careful about it because, I'll just speak right now to anyone who has been hurt. If you hear me now speaking about forgiveness and you're like, I'm not ready to hear this, that's fine. If you're not ready to hear it, I'm not pushing it. But other people are listening to it and they're like, you know what? I may be ready to, let me just hear them out. So if you're in a place right now where for your own sanity, you have to completely cut off any possibility of forgiveness, I'm not here to convince you to let up on that. But if you're at a place in your journey where you're thinking about, maybe forgiveness, what I'll say is that forgiveness is a form of freedom. When we carry the hurt of past wrongs, even when those were legitimate wrongs, we burden ourselves. And part of our faith in Hashem is that there is divine justice. And I don't have to be the parole officer who checks up on the case of this person who wronged me to make sure that they're getting their divine comeuppance. It's exhausting. It's heavy. It weighs me down. Another thing it does is it takes me away from my own life. Because imagine if on any level, even subconsciously, I'm keeping tabs on someone because I have a grudge against them. So I'm spending mental energy on keeping track of their life instead of on my own life. So it divorces me from my true self, the resentment. And when I can compassionately let go and say, you know what? I know what was done to me was wrong. I'm not in denial. I'm not pretending that it was okay. I know what was done to me was wrong. I know I didn't deserve it. Because, in some cases, we can see our part in it. In other cases, like people who were abused as children, they had no part in it, right? So there are different scenarios. Sometimes it's like, oh, I can see I had a part in it. Maybe the way the person retaliated against me was disproportionate, and but I see I had a, it takes two to tango. I had a part in it. And then there are other scenarios, like someone who was abused as a child, they had no part in it. So it's not even like I did anything wrong. I didn't deserve this. So I know what was done to me was objectively wrong. I know what was done to me I did not deserve. And yet, I don't have to carry the weight of this. I can release this person or my feelings about this person to the care of Hashem and let Hashem take care of this person however Hashem sees fit. And it's so freeing. But there's this, the ego tells us, the ego just wants to keep us safe. Remember, the ego was created by God for a God-given purpose. It's our survival mechanism. So the ego tells us that refusing to forgive is part of protecting ourselves from it happening again. And it's not really true. It sounds logical. It's good ego logic. But you can protect yourself from it happening again, and you can have a soft, compassionate heart and move on. You can do both.
That's very profound. That could probably, people could be unchained.
You see, when somebody gives up their
Families have been broken over conflict.
You see, when people let go, that not only is there healing in the relationship when possible, sometimes not possible, but more remarkably, I think, is that you see that the person who lets go, the person who's able to forgive, will have their own personal spiritual breakthrough. Like they'll all of a sudden rocket off into this new level of growth. Like, what's that about? Where did that come from? Like, I understand if it heals the relationship because it was about the relationship. Why are they all of a sudden having this growth in a totally personal way that has nothing to do with the relationship? And it's like I'm saying, that the weight of the resentment really just holds us back from moving on to where we need to move on to.
Very interesting. Back to neurodivergency for a second.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten emails and messages about this topic. So a lot of people are dealing with it. Whether their kids are higher up on the spectrum or lower down on the spectrum. What are some of the challenges that those people face in the world that other people could be more sensitive to?
You know, it's almost like, so the term that I've been told is more descriptive is like high support needs, low support needs. It's almost like somebody with high support needs in some ways is socially going to have an easier time of it because everybody understands what they're dealing with. And somebody with low support needs.
Some people wouldn't even realize. Yeah.
Right. Like I heard one person say, a woman with autism, she said, when you say that I have minor autism, it doesn't mean how my autism affects me. It's talking about how it affects you, meaning it's minor for you. It doesn't inconvenience you,
Right.
but it's draining me. I'm exhausted dealing with this. And, you know, like we were talking about before, just the masking. So the masking behavior is draining. One thing I've spoken about this before, and I want to keep speaking about it because I see how important this is, especially for children, but it's not only children. To understand the level of exhaustion, physical exhaustion that a masking individual can feel just from going through a normal day. I'm not talking about a stressful day. Nothing bad happened. It was just, I went to work, I went to school, whatever it is. I commuted, I took the bus, I took the train, whatever. Simple. So I went to the store and just negotiating through the regular processes of a day can be exhausting. So the kid who comes home from school and either he collapses. Okay, so the collapsing is more benign because it's like, oh, it's just collapsing. But sometimes, you know, the kid will come home from school and just start twirling or making weird noises. And it's like the parent is freaked out what's going on here, especially if the kid is high masking where he didn't do it all day.
Right.
He didn't want to get bullied, right? So if he was stimming, they call it, maybe he was, you know, doing something very like undercover, nobody would see. Then he comes home and now all of a sudden he's really just, the term is stimming, self-stimulating. Because he's exhausted and he's just trying to regulate, just trying to soothe himself. And the parents will be taken aback, like, what is this bizarre, disruptive, frightening behavior? And parents have to know it, like, no, it's okay. It's okay. Your kid just came home from the battlefront. He was just fighting a war, sitting in that seat, you know, giving adequate eye contact, however, whatever's considered socially acceptable. Just even being hyper-focused to not break social rules that you're not even sure what those rules are. which I can come back and talk about that in a moment. But let me just close this loop. So he comes home from the battlefront, and he or she is exhausted. Like, the home should be the place. If you have a neurodivergent kid in your home who's high masking, home should be the place where they know that you and all the siblings know what masking is, you know what stimming is, you know when they come home, not hurting anyone. See, the blow-ups that often happen, and this is really is interesting. We're talking about this podcast has a very wide audience, and this is a very niche subject. But for the few people this applies to, this is serious everyday issues. There are the blow-ups, like the fights, literal fights, and it can be so stressful. A lot of that stress and that fighting can be reduced, if not eliminated in many cases, just by being aware of what's happening. The kid who comes home and is exhausted from masking and needs to get himself calm, and maybe he has sensory issues. So he's getting all worked up. He's sitting at the dinner table and he's like, oh, my sister's chewing too loud. And what do the parents do? No, that's not true. And oh, don't say that. That's rude. And you're going to sit there and be normal. Hold on a second. Maybe just, this is highly particular stuff. I don't know how many people this applies to, but for the people that it does apply to, maybe it's okay. The kid who's stressed out because he was masking all day and he is sensitive to sensory input, and the dinner table just is overwhelming. Like, you got to understand, this could be for this kid, like for you to try to do your tax returns while there's a jackhammer going off in your ear. Right. So he's sitting at the dinner table, he's hearing chewing noises, and he's going out of his skull. Like, just let him go, get up and go. Like, doesn't have to become a fight.
Right.
So there's a lot of, and this goes back to what I was saying before about compassion. There's a lot of conflict that can be avoided just through compassion and understanding. But can I go back to another thing about the neurodivergent kid? I wondered, what was the thing? Oh, yeah. I didn't go into this, but I want to go back to it. Yeah. So a lot of times, neurodivergent kids will have, there are different terms for it, but basically in what we call it in the Jewish community, we call it chutzpah. We call it chutzpah, and that's how it gets branded. It gets branded as chutzpah. It gets branded as a bad midah. And what it actually is a need to clarify why, coupled with also a lack of appreciation for social hierarchy, which, let me unpack that in simple words. Neurotypical people tend to recognize the pecking order. Like, here are the people who get to tell you what to do, and here are the people who have to do what they're told to do. And maybe a neurodivergent kid won't recognize that. Like, well, why do I have to do it? Just because an adult said, just because a teacher said, like, if it doesn't make sense, right? And that's very related to this concept of clarifying questions, wanting to know why. And it's interesting because a lot of times, I'll just speak about our community, we will we'll use this non-answer of, sometimes we'll call it nasa v'nishma, dress it up a nice way, Kabbalah soil, which is really saying, don't ask questions. And I'm not denigrating that as a Jewish value. Submission to the yoke of the kingdom of heaven is a very important spiritual tool. But it has to be taught. You can't have Kabbalah oil to the concept of Kabbalah oil. In other words, you have to teach the value of it, and then you can invoke it. But if it's never taught, so you'll have, this really applies to all kids, but especially a neurodivergent kid who's like really struggling with like, but this makes no sense. But why am I being told this? And so they get branded as rebellious, which is awful, because once you have that rebel label, that's just the end. And it's not rebelliousness. they want to they need to understand. They don't feel safe if they don't understand. Like, this is just unsettling and weird. We're being told to do a bunch of things that make no sense to me. This doesn't feel safe. So if you can just answer them without being offended. I'm speaking to the adults now, teachers and parents. Instead of being offended and be like, well, how dare you question me? If this is what they need to feel safe, what's wrong with answering the question? What's wrong with answering it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I was thinking about, where's the source for neurodivergent kids in Torah? Because everything has to come.
Is there a source? Was there someone in Torah that was neurodivergent?
I'm sure there were many people. Yeah. And
so the technical definition of neurodivergent is someone who does something that's not their brain.
Well, the brain's wired differently.
Which,
by the way, technically,
we're all neurodivergent,
right? Because the Gemara says, "Ein deisam shel bnei
Right.
shaves," that no two minds are identical. The Gemara in Bracha says that actually, just like no two people have the same face,
so there's no there's no
there's no neurotypical.
Yeah.
Right. According to Torah, in a certain way, there is nothing called neurotypical because everyone is different.
So that's what I'm struggling with. Like, I don't.
But on the other hand, there is something called normative thinking. Like in halacha, for instance, there's a concept called batel daitoi. Like if a person says, but I want to eat raw potatoes. Yeah, but that's not the derech. You don't make a hadama on a raw potato. So there is something considered normative within Torah.
Everybody knows the Rothenberg Law Firm. Wherever you look, you can be driving on the BQE, you can be listening to a Met game. You're going to hear about injurylawyer.com, the Rothenberg Law Firm. There's a reason for that. For over 5 decades, they have been a trusted company in the field of injury law. So if you're ever in an accident, there's 2 numbers you need to call. 1, Hatzalah, 2, Rothenberg. You may want to put your wife on there, but definitely after you call the lawyer, you know? Anyways, head to injurylawyer.com, fill out your free case evaluation today. You may have a case on your hands and the Rothenbergs are there for you. They've won billions of dollars in settlements for their clients. Here's the best part. If they don't win, you don't pay. Say it with me. If they don't win, you don't pay. But guess what? They probably will win. That is the Rothenberg way. Head to injurylawyer.com. That is injurylawyer.com today. If you're ever in an accident, make sure you know this URL cold in your head. Injurylawyer.com. That is my friends at the Rothenberg Law Firm. We are back to this episode. A quick word to my friends at Growtha, because the SEO that you need is just right around the corner. Actually, just 2 clicks away. To URL, hit growtha.com. Click. Oh, 1 click. Look at that. It's so simple. Growtha.com is the SEO that you want and you need. Your healthcare company wants to be number 1 on Google. When someone Googles, hey, what's the best healthcare aids I can find near me? What's the best nursing home in my community? What's the best rehab for my grandmother in this community? Who's going to show up on top of Google? The people who are using Growtha. It's very, very simple. So business owners, listen up. If you need this in your business, which generates hundreds of leads, Growtha is the place for you. Yes, Josh Cherniak, a wonder kid. Go ahead, head to growtha.com. That is growtha.com. And I need to say no more. You'll see exactly why you should be using them. Go to growtha.com today.
So if I give a scenario to someone who's neurodivergent and say, you got into an elevator and someone's standing there and you're going up 30 flights together, the neurodivergent mind would do X and the neurotypical mind would do Y?
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to illustrate it. Like, how would you respond to certain common scenarios? Yeah, but it's not just, it's different. It's a specific type of different, because when you start talking about it, you hear certain themes are emerging. Like I mentioned some of the things, missing social cues and therefore needing to be like super on your toes to mask in order to not be bullied. I mentioned sensory sensitivity, like just feeling things really, really deeply. I mentioned a lack of recognition of social hierarchy, which comes off as rebelliousness. Right. I mentioned a need for like a lot of clarification. And the way I see it is this. I told you earlier with myself, the way that I understand my journey right now is in appreciating embodiment, that the soul came to the body. We're here to refine the body. We're here to refine the physical plane, to bring Mashiach here to the physical world, that the souls and bodies and Gan Eden come back to this world. So the way that I look at it is, and I think this actually is a a way of sort of tying it all together and explains a lot, is people whose souls have an extra difficult time being embodied. So being uncomfortable with the embodiment. Now, everyone is uncomfortable with embodiment to some extent, like the Mishnah says, "Ba'al kocha tochai," against your will do you live. Against your will do you. What does that mean? It means the soul doesn't want to be embodied.
We want to be up there.
We want to be up there because that's our natural habitat. That's where we're from. But there are those who have a harder time adapting than others. And I have a whole theory about this, totally unsubstantiated theory, but I've been floating it out there and just anecdotally getting reinforcing stories. But I think it's related to the physical expression of it is autoimmune disorders. Yeah, because autoimmune disorders, what is that? It's your rejection of self. It's being allergic to yourself. Why would your own God-given immune system turn on your body and recognize your body as a foreign entity, as an antigen? So, and as a kid, by the way, I had an autoimmune disorder, which thank God is, in remission, but it's allergy to self. It's being at odds with oneself. Like, this is weird. I don't belong here. And so, like, the emotional level manifestation of that would be like this feeling of terminal uniqueness. It's a common term. Terminal uniqueness. Like, I'm different. I'm always going to be different. Like lonely in a crowded room, always wanting to feel a part of and instead feeling apart from. That's a very common experience for people wired this way. And then just this, if you want to talk about it on a spiritual level, just this underlying feeling of like, I'm not made for this world. Like, I don't belong here. Like, which is actually true. Like, you, the real you, your soul isn't from here. It's very weird that you're here. And so this sensitivity to the weirdness of embodiment is, I think, coming from a legitimate place. So I was thinking about, where's the source in Torah? Where do we find neurodivergent kids? So this is my theory. You can tell me, you can give me pushback on it. But I think Nadav and Avihu, for many reasons. But the simplest explanation is, Aaron HaKohen's 2 sons. He had 4 kids and 4 sons. Two of them died. How did they die? So they went to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, to the Holy of Holies, and their souls went out in a fire. So, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh explains it basically that it wasn't a punishment. It was more like they got so excited about being in such a holy place. They were like, let's just give into this. Let's totally submit to the awesomeness of this experience. And they allowed their souls to escape. They wanted out of here. So who were they? There were these kids who were uncomfortable with embodiment, and they had an opportunity to leave the embodiment, and they took it.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Which, again, is that so crazy? I mean, Chazal say, Noyach leila adam shalei nivra. It's actually preferable not to be created, right? So
then why are we so scared of death?
So it's it gets you coming and going. Against your will you live, against your will you die. You know what it is? It's after a while you get used to it. The pool that felt cold when you jumped in, now it feels warm, and now you don't want to come out. It's going to feel cold. So we're afraid of the transition.
Like that song by Rothenberg, Neshama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Neshama didn't want to go down, and then it didn't want to go up.
Exactly.
Literally.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do when you're here?
So when we're here, we need to get really physical. And what do I mean by getting really physical? First of all, let me tell you what I don't mean. What I don't mean is the mistake that we make. I'll get comfortable with physicality. I'll get into pleasure seeking and indulgence and all the creature comforts, because who are we trying to comfort? We're trying to comfort the soul. It's not comforting to the soul. It's actually, it's a distraction. It numbs you because pleasure is numbing.
Right.
But to the contrary, it's making things worse. If the soul's uncomfortable in a body, and now you're indulging in all types of unholy things, or at least meaningless things, that's not making the soul comfortable. It's making it even, you're exacerbating the situation. So when I say getting physical, what I mean is really embracing the opportunity of physicality. You know, we were speaking about earlier, I don't know if it was before the cameras were rolling or after cameras were rolling, but that I'm an oval this year. My father passed away.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've given many Yizkor speeches, but I've never been in the room for Yizkor. I guess this year I will be. For I guess Pesach is the next coming Yom Tov. And wow, I mean, I'm just thinking about it already. I've been thinking, you know, it happened 16th of Kislev, so it's, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and been davening 3 times a day with a minyan and chazening and kaddish and all these things, which is an interesting lifestyle change. When the minyan becomes like catching a plane, where you have to be 5 minutes early and it cannot be late. You know, it's a lifestyle change. So, you know, so many times I've given a Yizkor speech about, well, why is Yizkor tzedakah? Because in the end, you know, I've looked what it says. It's really just a pledge for tzedakah. You think it's like going to be this poetic, these, I don't know, some type of description of the soul, or it's nothing spiritual. It's the opposite of spiritual. It's like really technical. It's physical. That's the point. The point is that the people saying Yizkor are the embodied souls. And they have the one thing that their parents' disembodied souls don't have and want more than anything. They have bodies and they have the ability to do a physical act. And especially tzedakah is the most physical of all physical acts. That's why in the Yerushalmi, it calls tzedakah ha-mitzvah. When it just says the mitzvah and it doesn't specify which mitzvah it means tzedakah, because tzedakah is the quintessential mitzvah. Because what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is a physical act that transforms the physical world. And tzedakah is that to the, you know, nth power. Because you think about it, the money you earn is from the expenditure of your energy. You have to go work, so that you're exerting physical energy and resources. Then you amass the money, which you could then go and spend on more physical resources. And then you take that whole thing and you turn it into a mitzvah. It's this transformation where the physical act becomes holy. The default of the physical world is mundane, not evil, but not holy. In the middle, mundane. When you take the physical resources, the money, and you turn it into a mitzvah, now it's physical, but it's holy. So, like, that's why Yizkor is tzedakah, because what can we do? We who are here still in the physical world, what can we do? We can refine the physical world. So I could apply this to so many things, not just tzedakah, but like literally just being able to be physically present. Like right here and now, like literally just here and now. Like I'm talking to you, obviously I'm cognizant of the fact that we have to have a conversation. But you know, like why? Like what if we were to just sit here in each other's presence and just hold space and not have to have something interesting to say?
And not talk?
And not have to feel that we need to talk.
You know, Benny Friedman had an idea called the Thoughtful Man podcast, the Thinking Man podcast, where he just sits there like this. And just do that for hours. Just watch a guy think. I don't know if it's in a cell, Benny, but
it's really powerful, though. Benny's a deep guy.
Yeah.
You know, people know him for his singing, but he's a deep guy. There's something really, really true about that. Like, just to be able to be in each other's physical presence. Like, does it always have to be words? Trust me, I'm a word guy. I made my whole My whole thing is words.
Soul
right?
words, yeah.
Soul words, yeah. But words are up here. It's abstraction. Words are spiritual. Think about it. Words are not physical things. They're ideas. They're inherently abstract.
People in dating are so scared they're so scared of silence.
Right, yeah.
But isn't silence the most beautiful thing sometimes?
It's everything. It's everything. And in fact, I would even say, if you are thinking of marrying someone and you can't comfortably sit in silence, like
buy a helmet.
Like
it's gonna be a long ride.
I wouldn't even. Don't get on that ride. You've got to be able to sit in silence together. But I think not just a husband and wife, like all of us. Like I would love to if we could just sit here in silence. We could look at the YouTube analytics. And we'd see the drop off, like
sure.
90%, and then all of a sudden they're sitting in silence. Goes.
It's interesting because even for everyone who's listening or watching right now, when was the last time they got an opportunity to just sit in silence?
Never.
So maybe we should just be quiet for a bit, and they should just be silent. Like
I would love it. Could we do it? Just even 1 minute?
I wonder if I could.
Can we try?
Definitely could. Sure.
Let's just sit here for a minute. And not to zone out and be like daydreaming, but just to be present, like
Meal Mart, Blooms.
Yeah. Think about editing this.
No, I mean,
you get into the giggles.
The distractions in the studio, it's not easy.
It's not easy. Let's do. Look, 10 more seconds.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Did that do anything for you?
Yeah, it did a lot.
Did it really?
It did. So, but this guy,
but you want to know why? Like off camera, they can't see, but we have a whole crew here of
people are so uncomfortable with silence.
People are so uncomfortable with silence. Why are we uncomfortable?
Well, they can't stop talking during davening. Boom.
Right. That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Why?
No, talking during davening is a different thing, I think. But why?
I don't think so. I don't think it's different.
People just want to catch up.
But they could do that before. They can do that after. They can even step outside right now. Why can't they just?
It's the most uncomfortable thing in the world, I think. Being in an elevator with someone and it's just silent for like 30 floors. Just like it's so hard to hold that space. Why is it so hard to hold that space?
Because it plunges us into hyper awareness, and we don't want to be that aware. See. Our main issue since day one, since the Chet Eitzadas Teverah, that's the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What knowledge did that introduce? It wasn't book knowledge. We see what kind of knowledge was. It was self-consciousness. That's why immediately after, Adam and Chava were ashamed. They had shame. And Hashem asked them even, why did you put on clothes so we won't be ashamed? He said, who told you that you're naked? Meaning the human condition is this feeling of detachment from self, this being divorced from my own true self, where I'm conscious of self instead of just being myself. So silence is showing up as yourself, as opposed to distracting yourself and getting to hear this narration about yourself, about the moment.
Yeah.
It's, by the way, it's very similar to the difference between the 6 days and Shabbos, which is why for many people Shabbos is very challenging.
Right.
Because 6 days is distraction. You're doing. Shabbos, you're being. Being is very raw.
It's hard sometimes when you're not okay with yourself also.
That's right.
I kind of feel bad now that I make a podcast because people probably play this as a distraction from just being with themselves silently.
Yes, I'm sure they do. I know they do.
Well, not in this episode. We're going to hit them with that 60 seconds of silence that they're going to have to come to grips with.
It's okay.
The Lubavitch Rebbe was a very big component of a moment of silence.
I didn't even think that. That's so true. Great connection.
Introspection.
So it was a movement to introduce a moment of silence, specifically in public schools.
Yeah.
Yes. The Rebbe was a big proponent of that, of bringing God back into civilization. And in one way was to have a moment of silence in schools. And one point of it being a moment of silence is that the teacher shouldn't impose their religious views. So it's a moment of silence. No one's leading a prayer of any particular religion. They're just given a moment for introspection.
It's interesting, though, that the Rebbe felt that a moment of silence in the Rebbe's mind was directly correlated with thinking about God. That when someone is going to lead to that moment of silence.
What else would you think?
I mean, it can lead to a lot of things.
So you're saying for a tzaddik, if you have a moment of silence, what else are you going to think about but think about Hashem?
Well, that's the default setting, probably, of the Rebbe's belief.
You know what, though? You're leading me to realize that it's all of our default settings.
Yeah.
That when you get rid of the distraction, eventually, when you get down to the rawness, the realness of just what is, well, what do you call that?
Godly.
That's the godliness.
Yeah.
And when I was saying before, like in Golus, God is masking. When Mashiach comes, God takes off the mask. That's where Hashem just gets to be. He just gets to be instead of having to play a role, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we get to be. Can I bring up something, as long as I have this platform here?
Please.
Because so many people watch this and feel like there's an opportunity here. I want to go delicately, but when we're talking about being our authentic selves and taking off the mask, trying to be comfortable with ourselves, I feel like I'm just going to speak about our community, and by that I mean the Jewish community. I feel like there's a lot of social pressure for conformity. Is that okay to say
100%,
that?
yeah, totally. I think say more.
Okay. So I think there's a lot of social pressure for conformity. It comes out in many different ways. The keeping up with the Joneses, that is the easy one to bash because, when people are living beyond their means, that's obviously not healthy. But even things that aren't necessarily materialistic, even just things like, I'll give you a glaring example that I confront rather regularly. There's a new concept in the Jewish world, relatively new concept, and it has different terms in different places, but sometimes they'll call it like an alternative yeshiva. How come? I mean, it's getting better. It's getting better, but no one will send their kid to the yeshiva that he actually needs, that will actually accommodate him until he's literally falling apart, where not only the kid's not frum, but he's having a mental health crisis. And then we could admit that he doesn't have to do the same thing as everybody else. It's like, why couldn't we have done this as soon as you understood? When the kid was 6 years old, you had an opportunity. Why do we have to smush them into this box and then we won't consider anything minorly different until we're in a crisis? Well, you know what I think that comes from? It comes from this dread of being different. Oh my goodness, I'll be different. My kid will be different. My family will be different. And so to avoid being different, you end up making this child miserable. And in the end, the thing that you were afraid is going to happen usually happens anyways, because you drive him to the point where he falls apart. And that's just one example.
I think it's one word.
What?
Shidduchim.
Shidduchim is definitely a big driver.
One word.
For conformity. You think that's what it all comes down to?
It depends on which community. I think with the firmer communities, I think it comes down to shidduchim. I think from the second this kid is practically old enough to speak, the family is scared to do something that may put them on a different path, because what about shidduchim?
But why don't we believe that
What
Hashem
are people
makes
going to
shidduchim?
say?
Why don't we believe that the shidduch is kosher k'kriyas yam? So if it's a miracle, every shidduch is min hashamayim. Where's our amunah?
I mean, we're doing the work here at Meaningful Minute with Stories of Hope podcast, that has a whole podcast dedicated to showing people how Hashem makes shidduchim, and that there's no such thing as a shidduch crisis. But for so many years, our society's been plagued by there's a shidduch crisis.
Right.
And
well, if you box yourself into
that's
one...
so anti-Hashem.
Yeah.
That's so anti-God.
Yeah.
You're removing him completely from the picture. Yeah. There's a shidduch crisis. There's a parnasa crisis. There's, what else is there?
Chinuch crisis.
Chinuch crisis and an OTD crisis.
And you're saying a lot of these are self-imposed, unintentionally. If we would...
You're the expert. I'm just...
I'm saying...
Just speaking out loud. I'm not anyone to speak on this topic, but just like...
We'd have a little more amunah and
can't
trust
remove God
Hashem's
from the picture here.
Path for us, and trust that we have unconventional paths, and every one of us is a miracle, and our lives are going to be wondrous and mysterious in many ways.
Yeah. Can you imagine what the world will look like if you actually did what's best for your kid as opposed to what looks like what's best?
I know.
This episode is also sponsored by my friends at Town Appliance. Yes, because you may need new appliances now. Your appliances are talking to each other like, guys, this is the end. What are we doing? We're not working that well anymore. Why hasn't he replaced us? Or your empty new houses be like, yo, can't wait to get some appliances up in here, you know? This is going to be fun. Regardless of what your appliances are saying or not saying, which you should really call someone if they are, head to townappliance.com. Ever since 1979, they have been the #1 appliance store for the Jewish community. You can even send them a message on WhatsApp and get in touch with one of their top-level customer service salespeople. Go ahead. Town Appliance is the place for you.
Like, you know, how many schools have to, on day one, deal with their kid is not in that class, and now the parents are fighting to get them into that class or to that school, when in reality, they don't belong there.
They don't belong. So they're fighting. They're turning over the world, which I love to see parents advocate for their kids. That's beautiful. But
advocate for your kid, not for yourself.
Exactly.
Not for you.
So you're fighting
not for your ego
to get something that you want because of the narrative that it supports, but it's terrible for the kid. Yeah.
Yeah, I said this on a different podcast, but I owned the sports league in the Five Towns for a while. And there came to a point where we almost said, you know what? No more parents allowed in the crowd. Because the kids were getting so emotional based off of the response of their parents in the crowd that one week we had no parents and the kids were very, very level-headed.
Just enjoying.
And we realized that, you know what? Who's really the kids and who's really the adults? It's I don't know. You know, I say, like, in camp, you got 16 kids in a bunk. They figure it out. They all live. They figure it out through a whole summer. The strife, the ups, the downs. There's no adult really dictating everything, because guess what? That 18-year-old counselor, he himself is a kid. He's not an adult. Come on. So, let's luzz off a bit, no?
There's also more freedom in camp. I mean, people are already starting to think about camp, by the way.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's
I love the
February.
summer. I love the summer.
But, you know, part of the freedom of camp also is the freedom to occupy yourself productively. And a lot of what we're doing in the name of conformity, in the name of being normal, is forcing people to not be productive, which causes dysfunction. When a person is forced to do something that they're not good at and they're not comfortable doing,
stifling.
It
might as well tie their hands behind their back.
I'm not saying that everyone should just go run around and we should just be like animals in the jungle and do whatever you feel like. Obviously, there's a Shulchan Aruch, there's a code of Jewish law, there are standards.
There are even social norms that many of them should be abided to because they are there for a reason. But how far do we take it? Look at some other communities that maybe we don't live in. How far have they taken it? I'm not going to list examples. It's not nice, but everyone can think. Everyone who's listening or watching can think for themselves. Have we created our own set of rules, our own Torah in our own lives that isn't the actual case?
And the degree of stress that it's causing people to have to
live up to
conform
that.
Yeah.
to live up to a certain thing that is like, wait, where'd you get that from?
See, the way that I view, the way that I understand Torah is that Torah is, there's a Medrash Tana Develio that asks the question, two things came before the world, like Bereshis, Beis Reshis, the two things came before Yisrael and Torah. But I don't know, mi kodem es mi, which one came before which? Between Torah and Yisrael, between Torah and the Jews, which one came before the other? So the Medrash gives a mashal, says there was a king, common mashal, king with children. The king wanted to teach the children how to live, so he hired a malamed, he hired a tutor. Not that the king had a tutor, and so he needed to put the tutor to work, so he went out and had some kids. No, he had kids. He wanted to learn how to live, so he hired the tutor. So the Medrash concludes that it's not that the Torah existed and then Hashem made Bnei Yisrael to carry it out. It's that he had his children, Bnei Yisrael, and then for their sake, he created Torah so that they would be able to express themselves more fully. In other words, when we say, mi kodem es mi, which comes before the other? Obviously, we don't mean chronologically because this is before creation, there's no time. Which one? Kedima can mean in Zman, chronological, or Kedima can mean Kedimas Hamayla. It can mean prioritization, meaning which one exists for the sake of the other. So, does Torah exist for the sake of the Jew, or does the Jew exist for the sake of the Torah? If you say the Jew exists for the sake of the Torah, what that means is that there's this agenda called Torah, and you, as a Jew, your whole purpose is to make sure that gets done. But that's not what the Medrash concludes. The Medrash concludes the exact opposite, that the Torah exists for the sake of Yisrael, meaning to say that Hashem has his children, these souls, and then these souls come down into bodies. Torah exists for the sake of these embodied souls to be able to express themselves more fully. In other words, a child who grows up with Torah and mitzvahs should feel that they were given an advantage in knowing who they are, knowing that their existence is important, having an opportunity to always be productive, to always feel that there's something they can contribute. It should empower somebody to feel like my existence is meaningful and important. And it should definitely not be something that is a burden where it ultimately divorces someone from embracing their true self. It shouldn't cause me a confusion about my identity. It should give me this glorious clarity about my identity.
There's something Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, I heard him say about systems, how the second that people are here to serve systems, we have it all wrong. Systems are here to serve people. And we can't get it twisted. You can't live in a world where there's one size fits. And if you don't fit, we're slicing off the pieces that don't, and you got to go.
The Rebbe speaks about this in terms of klal uprat, general and specific. Or another way to describe it is yochid and tzibur, individual and community. So the Rebbe brings out an incredible point. There's a halacha in Rambam regarding Kiddush Hashem. Talks about a scenario which unfortunately is not a theoretical scenario. It's a scenario that's happened many times in Jewish history where a hostile group of non-Jews besieges a group of Jews and they say, Tnu lonu echad mikem, hand over one of you, or we'll kill the whole group. Logically, you hand over the individual, save the group. And the halacha is you don't hand over the individual. Now, you would think any group that has a rule like that won't survive for very long, especially if they're a persecuted minority. That's the ego says that if this guy needs to be given up to save the group, sorry, Charlie, we're going to give you up.
Yeah.
And yet Torah says, that the group will even sacrifice itself as a group to preserve the individual. It's counterintuitive, doesn't sound like a very good method for survival, and that's what the ego is going to insist upon. It's going to say, this is suicidal, this is crazy, you can't survive this way. But the reality is that when we're ready to make sacrifices to preserve the individual, that's when the group flourishes. The flourishing of the Jewish people is not based on undermining individual worth. It's based on preserving and promoting individual worth. It's something I think that really we need to get back in touch with and promote.
100%.
Like if a child has a talent. I was talking before about children who have challenges, so being accommodating for their challenges, but let's even put it in a positive way. If a child has a talent, they have something they're good at, and they want to explore that, and it's a form of self-expression. Like, where are the opportunities to promote that? That's...
So what's the tachlis? I mean, we always I always appreciate in doing episodes that can really lead to societal or cultural change.
Yeah.
And that's really what we seek to do and hope to do, is to start conversations that can lead to different outcomes. Because how many people are we losing because of forced conformity?
So I'll tell you something that's going to sound cynical, and maybe I'm going to regret saying this. There's a reason, I have a parenting course, and there's a reason why I focus on parents. There are many reasons I focus on parents, but one reason I focus on parents is because I believe that our best bet and our fastest track to real change will not be within institutions, but within families. In other words, if we want to create a revolution, which I'll be transparent, I do want to create a revolution where every single child feels loved and supported and acknowledged and seen for who they really are, and feels that Torah is the greatest way for them to express their truest self. Yes, I want to see that. Where to affect that change is in families. For many reasons, but one reason is because sooner or later, the parents are going to be the ones who are going to say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I cannot continue to make this sacrifice. And for what? What are we doing this for? Parents will do right by their children, as a rule, eventually. And when parents start to insist on certain things, then there'll be a shift in the culture at large, in the community at large. And one example I give, it's sort of a silly example, but I can remember, I'm not that old, I'm 50, but I can remember a day when there really weren't good kosher restaurants. I mean, there are a few fancy ones, but other than that, your standard kosher restaurant with greasy pizza, and that's what you got. Fries, and that's what you got. And now, there are so many great kosher restaurants, and if it's not great, it'll go out of business. What happened?
I don't know, more people?
You think it's just more people?
Or
I think
opulence, maybe?
I think they became discerning. Now, you could say it had a lot to do with Balei Tshuva, who knew the difference, but the point is people became discerning, and when the clientele expected a certain level, that's what the providers had to provide. It's just, that's capitalism. That's how it works.
It's interesting. You say that about everything, how, Jewish orchestras used to sound 20 years ago and how they sound today, the arrangements, the Jewish music.
Right.
It's why were they okay with?
How did they get away with that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So what I'm saying is, when we as a consumer base become more discerning and we expect more, eventually we get more.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, if every parent will truly cherish each of their children as a unique soul, to be protected, to be cherished, to be promoted, to facilitate this unique child shining in their unique way. And every parent will insist on that and will not tolerate their child being in a place or around people who don't promote that, let alone who are thwarting that. Then when that becomes the expectation, then that is going to become the general rule. And no one will be able to get away with offering anything different. And it's already happening. There's a lot of positive change happening. Even like, especially in the past 10 years, a lot of change that would have been thought unthinkable 20 years ago. A lot of creative educators, really devoted educators who are thinking out of the box and doing things for the children as opposed to for what supposedly looks right or looks normal. But it's what we're seeing now, this is just the beginning. It's going to be a groundswell. It's going to be massive. It's happening already, and it's only going to happen more and more and more. And what it basically comes down to is it's a revolution of seeing each individual, including children, maybe especially children, as souls. And when that happens, everything else changes. All these other issues that we're talking about are just symptoms.
Like, I love it.
All these broken systems, they will inherently
change.
Heal. Yeah, they'll change. Yeah.
I love it. Rabbi Shais.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure. How long were we talking about? Like 5 minutes?
Hour and a half.
Hour and a half, really?
Yeah.
You're counting the minute of silence?
I want to show you something. We have this game over here that we made. It's not a market yet. It's launching February 9th. We're doing a whole marketing campaign around it. It's Meaningful People game, so people could bring these games. People can bring the podcast to their homes on Shabbos. You see?
Oh, beautiful.
So I'll ask you.
We were talking about that.
Yeah,
Shabbos.
I'll ask you a question that I'll pick it up from the middle. I'll ask you one question to answer, and
okay. This is how the game is played.
This is how the game is played.
You just pull out randomly a card and you ask the other person. Okay. Oh, it's like a little podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. This is a great question.
Okay, let's see.
Who is someone you'd like to show how far you have come?
Oh my gosh. Wow. It's going to sound trite, but I'm just thinking about it. This is the answer. You know, I said my father passed away, but he was so proud of me, and he made me know it. He made sure I knew it. My mother, soul goes inside. She lets me know she's proud. Like, and as far as like any naysayers in my past who like they doubted me and I'm going to come back and I'll show them I was on Meaningful Minute, like Meaningful People. I was on Meaningful Minute as well, by the way. Okay, but
sure.
And I don't care about that. But like honestly, it's going to sound trite, but I wish I could show myself, because day to day, you know, being in the grind, just every day, just trying to make progress. And I've thought about this before. Like, I wish I could just magically see where I was, feel how I was, let's say even 10 years ago, and then feel how I am now, and like get to appreciate how awesome right now is. Like when you get new glasses and all of a sudden you realize you couldn't see before. Like, I wish I could see. I wish I could have a moment just to see where was I at some random point in my past, and now like all the things that I used to dream for, like that were like beyond my hopes. There weren't even things I would daven for. It's just beyond, and now I have them. Like, why don't I walk around feeling awesome all day?
Yeah.
So I would like to show myself. I want to do it to you. Can I do it?
Yeah, sure. You can
push over the box. I want to.
Here you go.
Okay, I want to flip
Sweating.
it on you.
I don't know what's in here.
Okay. You didn't make these?
I did. I mean, my wife, she had a big part in it.
Okay, so maybe this will be one that your wife wrote. Okay. I don't know if this is so personal. This is more okay, and it's related to something we spoke about.
It is or isn't?
It is. It is very related to it. But you could take it wherever you want. Obviously. Okay. What is an issue in our society that you feel passionate about?
Oh, what is an issue in our society that I feel passionate about? A lot. There's a lot of stuff, but the second you said something, the second you said that, there's one thing that popped in my mind, And that is acceptance when it comes to schools, seminaries, yeshivas. Every year there's a certain time of year that we get loads of seminary girls that message Meaningful Minute asking if the minute can be sponsored and their schus so they get accepted to the seminary. And I get it, a seminary can't take in everybody, but we've created such a yira, such a fear, such an unhealthy fear. We're talking about boys and girls that are going to learn Torah, that are going to do Avodas Hashem. And we have to make sure everyone has a place. Everyone has a place, that there should be no Jewish kid that feels that they were slighted or they were wrong.
Right. Who wants to be there and can't be there, yeah.
No, and of course, granted, like if someone has 3 options and they just don't like the other 2, again, they have to be honest with themselves of where they belong. But I've heard so many stories of rejection because of the mother looks like this or the father looks like that or the kid comes from this background. And I think back to the Rav Steinman video, Gaiva, Gaiva, Gaiva. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we were saying before about the conformity all being about ego.
Yeah. There was a girl who was on there was a girl who I know who had a very hard time getting into high schools. And she was on this podcast. And because something happened in her life.
She was a guest here.
Yeah, something happened in her life where she, the circumstances, and she had come on and had given a ton of chizuk. Tremendous. And the very schools that rejected her were asking her to come speak to their students. And I call that, the diamond that you missed. Now the question is, how many of those exist every single year? Every single year.
See, this is what I was talking about before about like the different people, the offbeat people. I don't know who this woman is and what her story is and what she went through, but like, I'm making certain assumptions that she had an unconventional path, which in the end, when the story has a nice finish, it's like a hero's journey. But when you're in the middle of it, nobody wants to bet on it. No one wants to be attached to that 100%. Because it's, doesn't look so stable. And the thing is, it's like, look, we have to have a certain amount of emunah that neshamas find their way, especially if we support them, or at the very least don't thwart them. Neshamas find their way, and every neshama came to this world for an awesome story that, no neshama is redundant. There's no superfluous neshamas. So if you came here to this world, you have a shlichus that no neshama before ever did, no neshama after will ever do. And what, you think it's going to be a linear path? You think it's going to be boring?
Yeah.
It's probably going to be unconventional and interesting.
Yeah.
And like, just to allow ourselves permission to say, every path is unique. Every person is unique.
And I'd say a little further, even like, there should be every yeshiva, every school should say, you know what? There's going to be 5 people, 5 kids or 5 boys, 5 that this year I'm going to say, you know what? We're going to bet on you. We're going to bet that you're going to be the one that's for this place, as opposed to saying, well, we just don't see it. We don't think that you're the one. No, we're going to say, you know what? We see you have a neshama. We see potential in you. We're going to take a chance on you. You know how much confidence they'll do for that person? Life-changing.
And I would hope that if a school did that, it would reinforce how good of a thing that is to do, because when they'll have success stories, when they'll have alumni who they can be proud of, and they can get up at the dinner and say, this was a kid that we had to bet on, right?
Exactly.
Right, but this is the kid. And by the way, isn't it always that way, that the kid was out of the box, like in the end is the one who succeeds in a unusual way?
For sure.
So it's like we revere this conformity and the normalcy. And why? Like at the end, it's all the weirdos and the oddballs and the rejects who end up doing cool stuff.
Yeah, look at Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos.
All the weirdos. Like, let's celebrate the weirdness. And I don't mean, by the way, I just want to make another, I know we're going for a long time, but I want to clarify something, because I know what the reaction is from some people watching this. They're going to think I'm promoting like in your face weirdness for weirdness sake.
No, yeah.
And I just want to clarify, not only am I not saying that, but I'm saying the opposite of that. A lot of the weirdness, I'm just going to say it, I don't care. You could edit it out if it's too controversial. A lot of the weirdness that comes up in the Jewish community didn't have to come out that way. It was forced to come out that way, because when you stifle something, when you repress something so rigidly and don't give it a healthy outlet, sometimes it's going to pop up in a way you're not going to like.
Right.
So a lot of this like performative, exhibitionistic, like, look at how unusual I am, look how different I am, which is also ego. It's a different type of ego.
Yeah.
A lot of that, though, that wasn't necessary if we could have just given every child a healthy outlet, how to be different. And by different, I just mean be your true self. Just be authentic.
Yeah.
Just be you. Just shine your light. Be the person. You know the famous story, I hesitate to even say it because we've all heard it 1,000 times. Reb Zusha went, he was about to go Lamaila. He was on his deathbed. He was crying. And the Talmidim said, why are you crying? He said, I'm afraid of judgment. Why are you afraid of judgment? You lived a perfect life. He says, I don't think I'm afraid I'm going to go Lamaila and the Bezdin Shamaila is going to review my life and they're going to say to me, Zusha, why weren't you like Avram Avinu? Zusha, why weren't you like Moshe Rabbeinu? I'm afraid I'm going to get there. Going to say, Zusha, why weren't you like Zusha?
Right.
So it's like a lot of times we don't let Zusha be Zusha.
Yeah.
Because whatever, you say Shidduchim, whatever it is, ego, just fear, whatever it is, conformity, social norms, and we don't let him be himself or herself. And then what happens is it ends up coming out anyway, but in really... It has a violent eruption. It didn't have to come out as a violent eruption. It could have been channeled and used to do something awesome.
Yeah.
And if I could just like push one like call to action, even though it's sort of an abstract call to action, if you're a parent, do this for your child. And whether you're a parent or not, also please do this for yourself. And that is, you know, Nachi, you're talking about schools betting on kids. I'm saying bet on yourself, bet on your kid. Look at yourself, look at your kid and say, you know what? I don't have to be the picture perfect, normal archetype of what I'm supposed to be. I am me as Hashem made me. And I need to become the best version of myself, which means to express my talents, my God-given insights, what's special and unique about the way I'm wired, and just go shine and just go be that and give the world the gift of being my truest, authentic self.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Taub.
Okay.
How awesome
Thank
is
you
this?
so much for this opportunity.
Of course. And these will be for sale February 9th, I think. So
February 9th, where can we buy it?
meaningfulminute.org. It'll be on our site. And
okay.
We'll send you home with this.
Oh, really?
You and your kids could enjoy this on the Shabbos table.
I love it. Okay.
Just for
amazing. Kids, I got a new Shabbos game here.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode. Again, make sure to comment down below to win $200, right? We're answering the question. What was the question we asked? I remember because I did it just a second ago. The question was, what is one positive, unique thing about the place that you live? And my friends, make sure to head to meaningfulminute.org/thegame to buy this amazing game. It comes in this beautiful box. You'll be able to put it away very easily. Guys, the questions in this are awesome, okay? You're having friends over, you're having just your family. This is awesome for you guys. Let me take out a few questions just to show you the type of questions that we have here. Stuff that we would ask on the podcast. What role do you think a Yeshiva Beis Yaakov should play in the chinuch of our children? Great conversation starter. Does the idea of getting older scare you? Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? Who is one Jewish living figure that you would like to meet? Guys, so many great conversation starters. Great for dating happens to be. But no matter what stage your life on, whether you're kids, adults, or grandmas, this stuff is for you. meaningfulminute.org/thegame. Purchase it today, pre-order right now, and get it in no time. My friends, wishing you a beautiful week.